When we met last in Albuquerque, I showed you all a copy of my master spreadsheet for the rubrics, and I showed you what some of the buttons did, and I'm just pointing them out here across the top of this window. But since we've met, I've added a couple extra that I think will be very useful to you, and I changed a few to make them work a bit more effectively. So I want to take a quick moment and show you what all of these do. The most useful one is probably going to be this one called region. When we click on that, you see that it sorts all the students by region. It first sorts by region and then by the student ID, which gives you the last name and also includes the first name and the ID, and then finally sorts by time. What this means is it's going to put all of your kids together and all of their scores together by region, and I think that's going to be the most useful one. So it sorts region in reverse order, it sorts the students in reverse order, but the timestamp is in forward order, which means that the first score for a student will be the first line, the second score will be the second line, and the third rubric score will be the third line. And this becomes very important later when we want to look at growth over time. We have to get the students sorted correctly. We have to get the scores in chronological order. So that sort button above region will do that. So you see how it works here. There's New Mexico 7, and the kids are sorted in order, reverse order, but the time is sorted in forward order. All right. So that's if you want to take a look at all the kids, although this is more for me, you could simply click Student ID. This sorts all of the students by their ID and then sorts them by time. Now that ID is automatically generated from other identifiers, so it starts with the first three letters of the last name, includes the entire student's first name, the first two letters of the tutor's first name, the first letter of the tutor's last name, and then the region. And by doing this, it has enough information that each student is going to be unique. That way we don't end up mixing one student's first score with another student's second score and so forth. Each student's scores will be altogether one line after the next. So here's another example. You see how it has Costa and the first name, and Claudia and Rodriguez, and then finally the region. Okay, let's say you want to look just for a tutor. You can simply click on the sort button above tutors, and it will sort all of the tutors in alphabetical order. First, it sorts first by the last name and then by the first name. So this is a very simple way to find a specific tutor and all the scores for that tutor. There's also the button for student last name, which sorts by last name and then by first name for the students, but frankly I don't find that one very useful. I think between the student ID sorting button and the region sorting button, you're going to be able to very quickly find the students that you need. So that one's going to be much more useful. Matter of fact, I don't even use the student last one because really the student ID puts them all in order for me, which makes it very simple. Okay, so that's the important one. Now, let's take a look at some of these other quick features. And what I'm showing you here is that if we sort by student's last name, it really ends up looking very much like the sort for the student ID. But the student ID is going to be more accurate, just in case we have some kids with very similar names. You know, maybe they have the same first letters for their last name and then the couple of first letters for their first name. Now, sometimes you might end up marking some of the cells. Let's say you want to highlight this cell or that cell, and maybe you want to indicate something to go back to and take a look at later. So you go through and you're marking things right and left. Sometimes when I send them to you, I've got rows highlighted. Maybe I've highlighted just the newest scores, for example, or the newest entries. But over time, as you're marking it and playing with it and doing things to it, it can be kind of a mess. So, how do you clean it up? And let's even mess this up a little bit further. Let's go ahead and mess up those gray bars that separate the different sections of this, and let's also scroll way out to the end, and let's even get rid of some of those scores. Now, sometimes if we're moving kids around, these formulas get kind of messed up, and you end up with, it'll say reference or something like that. Or maybe they'd accidentally get deleted altogether. So that's kind of a problem. But there's a very simple way to fix all of this, to clean up the highlighting, put the scores back in, the formulas back in place, clean up the little walls between the sections. So what I'm doing here is I'm basically just messing it up in lots of different ways. And then I will show you which button you can use to clean up all of these problems and get the spreadsheet back in a good state. So I'm deleting stuff and all kinds of things. Alright, see this little broom up here? It's actually a paintbrush, but I'm going to call it a broom. That's your cleanup button. And when I click it, here's what happens. See, it zips around. All of that highlighting is now gone that I put in. The gray bars between various sections are all back in place again. And if you remember, I deleted a bunch of formulas from down here. Those formulas are all back in place. So it cleaned up all the formulas. So it cleans up highlighting, it cleans up the barriers between rows, and it re-adds all of the formulas just in case they got accidentally deleted. So there it is again. Now, what this doesn't do is it doesn't sort. So it leaves everything just sorted the way that you had it last. It will return you back to that first entry, so if you were farther down in the spreadsheet, you might need to scroll back to it. But it's not going to change the sorting. So here we've sorted by last name, and when I clean up, it's still sorted by last name. And if I sort by student ID and clean up, it'll still be sorted by student ID and so forth. Now, what happens if these formulas are missing or get deleted? This is a bit different. So there's a separate button for this. If you'll notice, cleanup will re-add those formulas, but only if the formulas in the top row work. Because what it does is it takes that top row and it copies it down the remaining rows. Now watch what happens if that top row is missing. All of them are missing because it takes the top row and it just copies it down. So if the top row is blank, they're all going to be blank, and that's what this button does. So the little man with the paintbrush fills in all of those formulas again, as you'll see here. And that's the only thing that button does. It doesn't do cleanup, it doesn't do sorting, it doesn't do anything. Okay, so here's something I think will be very useful. See these little magnifying glasses over here? There's a plus and a minus. Well, when you get this information, you have all these extra rows. Here's all the raw data, here's all the scores that get pulled up, but what you're really looking for are these rows down here with the scores. You want to know what the scores are for an assessment. You want to know what the growth is from the first score to the second score and the second to the first to the third. That's the part you're looking for, but the problem is you have to go by all of this other stuff just to get to it, and that can mean a lot of scrolling back and forth. So what these two little magnifying buttons will do is they will either hide or reveal, hide or show all those extra columns. So let's click that minus button. Minus is for hide, and now let's scroll over and see what happens. Look, right from the kids' identifiers to the assessment, and there are the scores right there. So all the raw stuff is all gone at this point. Of course, it's not gone, it's just hiding at this moment. And I hope that'll make it very easy for you to scroll right over to the actual information that you need, bypassing all the stuff you don't. But there's the other one, the magnifying glass with the plus, and what that one does is it unhides all of those rows, see, all those columns. See, they're all back again. There's all the stuff again. So the magnifying glass with the minus hides or shrinks everything, all the columns you don't need, and the magnifying glass with the plus will reveal all those extra columns. So whichever way you want to look at it is up to you. Personally, I like looking at it with all those extra columns hiding, because I don't need to see all that extra junk either. But if you do need it, you can always hit the plus button. And of course, I might just send it to you with all those columns in place, because when I enter the new information, I have to put in all the columns. So I generally enter information with the plus, with all the columns revealed. If you get it that way from me, just hit the minus magnifying glass and all that stuff will be hiding. Alright, here's the last one. This is the assessment button. You notice all the assessments are all mixed up by kid or however we have it sorted. But if you click the assessment sorting button, look what it does. All the third rubrics are at the top. Then it goes to the second rubrics, and then it goes to the third rubrics. So if you want to very quickly look and see, okay, has somebody submitted a first, second, or third rubric? Or if you're just curious how many firsts, how many seconds, how many thirds, you can always hit that sorting button. Now that's something probably that's going to be more useful to me as I'm doing comparisons across students and across tutors. But of course, it's going to be on the spreadsheet when you get it, so if that's useful to you, you now know what it does. See, there's second, and the first is below it. So that's the button above the assessment number. And I will point out one very last thing. You may have noticed, let's see, what am I doing here? Another quick sort by student ID. Okay. You may have noticed that I sometimes will scroll way out to the side or way down in the spreadsheet, but then I can suddenly return back up to that top column. There's a very simple way to do that. On your keyboard, if you type Control Home, Control key and the Home key, it will automatically take you all the way back up to A2.